Welcome back to another Touchpoint Group Banking App Insights session. We are looking at the UK market for October 2023, and we've got two banks that we'll primarily be focusing on in this session. NatWest. Now, we thought that they had bottomed out in September, but the decline has continued. So a quick look at why, and then we'll move on to Nationwide. Now, Nationwide has dropped to the lowest point in the last 12 months. Now, there's a mix of contributing factors. The new logo is one of them. And the 7th of October is a defining date, and Tony Patrick will reveal all.
Brilliant. Thank you, Glenn. Yeah, we'll get into the detail. We can show exactly those things you mentioned. So let's have a look at, first of all, the scores. Now, for those familiar with this, you'll know what this score is. This is the engaged customer score. This is the score coming from the app stores, iOS and Android. And what this is, though, is that the score, which is the engaged customer score, so those giving both a score and a comment, that gives us some really detailed information. We can see subtle movements, and for every movement in here, we know exactly why it's happened, which is why we can understand what's happening today. So one of the things we're looking at today is NatWest. We saw NatWest drop away in June because of that new update. Now, that's common. You make an update, there's changes. Customers aren't used to that change, but you expect that to turn around. It generally, best practice is 2 to 3 months. You should be getting back to where you were. But what's happened, we saw a bit of a turnaround in August, and September it sort of flattened again. So, what was going to happen? I did expect a bit of a turnaround, but something's happened in October. And another one here on this same page is looking at Nationwide. So Nationwide is its lowest point it's been in the past year. So what's happened there? What have they done in that space? Let's have a look first at some other apps. This is looking at some others sitting here, just an update of what's happening. Both Monzo and Moniz are sort of at the bottom there. We've got Moniz actually hitting a low point below 2, but I'll clear those away so we can get our scale going in here. And there's been some general increases in here. We can see like Starling doing very well. Revolut is improving but flattened out at about 4.2. So doing pretty positively there. Let's move on about the two we wanted to cover off. Let's move into those because that's important. This NatWest drop and also the Nationwide drop there. Let's focus first on that NatWest drop. What actually happened? What I'm showing you here, there's a lot going on here, but first of all, let's have a look at what we're looking at. These are pain points. We want these things to be as low as possible. So when they spike up, that's a bad thing, and that influences your score. So this is why the score's been moving around. We've got 4 key areas at the bottom, which are the biggest drivers of this of app scores. Authentication, so logging in, reliability and stability, features and functionality, and design and UI. So design and UI, we did see that spike. We've talked about that before. That's the issues happening with that new release. And we saw a nice slide away. This is week by week. We saw a nice slide away in issues as customers got used to the app. But we saw that score drop down in October. And at the end of September into October, we saw something happen here. Massive spike in reliability and stability issues. And as a consequence of that, we're seeing things like features and functionality issues. So that rolls through into, I tried to do something with a particular feature and it broke. So they're connected to each other. We also see, though, authentication issues have jumped up. So it's not just about reliability issues across the app. It's actually logging in's a problem for some customers as well. And also design and UI has not followed that same downward path we were expecting. Clearly some problems have happened in there. Let's have a look at the release cycle here. So what we're seeing here is actually, this is week by week across here. This is looking at NatWest. So week by week, what's the feedback look like? And then down the side, we've got the app release. From the most recent at the top, that's at 7.35, all the way down to 7.32. So we saw about middle to the end of September is when those reliability issues hit. So 7.34 is when it first hit. And we see the score there, 3.4, is lower than the scores behind it. And similarly for 7.35, the score is lower. So both of these hit sort of mid to the end of September and then into October are causing that issue. So both versions of this app. I won't dive into too much detail on this because I want to focus on something else for the moment. So it's interesting, though, that these releases can cause such an issue when they were going on such a nice trajectory and sort of turning things around a bit. But let's move into having a look here at actually something interesting. This is now focusing on, I'll just show you here, this is now focusing on Nationwide. So the two of the things looking at today. So Nationwide's the second one. What we're seeing, though, is that score drops. This is reflecting that same score we saw in the charts previously, going from 4.4 to 3.8. And 3.8, as we mentioned, is the lowest they've been across the past year. So what happened? And this is a nice quick diagnostic. We're seeing here this across these four areas, only one of them really increased. Reliability, stability increased slightly, but we see here design and UI has basically doubled from about 3.5 up to 7. So it's doubled in that. So not a major thing at the moment, but something to watch out for. So one of the things we can see, though, on the right, when we do an AI summary of the design and UI issues, we can see clearly here there's user interface issues. So many users find the new logo and design of the app confusing. There's been a launch of a new app with that new logo design, and it's not coming through well for many customers. So we can see here that it's confusing and hard to find. The color scheme is not well received, with some finding it difficult to distinguish from other banking apps. The user interface is described as basic, dull, and dated. This is customers saying this, by the way. There's clearly some problems coming through. And one of the things we can also see, if I even go to actual comments, let's just go to some comments in here, is I can see here, even someone who's given a 5, I do not like the new look. The UI is basically uninspired, design is horrible, the layout's dull. So there's some issues there with that design that's come through with that new logo as well. So let's move forward a bit and just have a look at this day by day. So when did this happen? So this happened on the 7th of October. That's when the score dropped dramatically there. So something has happened at that point, and it has moved up. So it's not something that seems like it's going to maintain itself. It has moved up, but I want to see that into November. But let's have a look, though, at what happened then. Now, what we found was this has come from version 38.0 sitting here. And that's that time we saw that drop has come through exactly at that point there when this 38.0 was launched. So that's that new design with the new logo and the new layout. And that's what's happened with this here. We can see the score has dropped from about 4.5 level down to 4, and 39.1 has continued that as well. It's lower than it was before. So clearly some things to have a think about for Nationwide. I don't think they're going to change their logo based on this, but it's clearly some problems. But let's have a look, though, at another little thing here we can do is look at mentions of the app logo and the app icon. And we can see they spiked exactly at that time when this came out. And in fact, there's one day there where we see that more than a quarter of the mentions of all the comments coming through for Nationwide were about the logo. So that's very interesting. And then there's another 8% there sitting there talking about the icon. So a mix of things there. So getting up to more than a third of comments coming through about this particular thing. And you can see this dropped away, though. Mentions of that day by day is dropping away. So this should move away over time. But clearly on the right there's a lot of feedback coming through about it's not just about just talking about it. It's saying many users expressed dislike for the new logo. It's similar to NatWest as one example. And the logo change has an impact on app recognition from their perspective. There's some positive feedback at it. As it says here, this quick summary is saying the majority of the feedback, there were a few users who liked it, but most didn't like it. So we'll see how that progresses across time, because this is obviously a major change for Nationwide, and they want uptake from customers to do very well. So thank you, Glenn.
Yeah, it's another great example of design and UI changes having an immediate impact on feedback from customers. And we've seen it time and time again, haven't we, Tony, where those changes happen, there is pushback in and around the visuals and maybe the navigation, and it is an education process over time, but also highlights the opportunity around maybe preloading and warming those customers up to changes that they may be coming in the app before rolling them out. We'll look forward to seeing you again next month. And if you want to talk to us about your bank, feel free to sing out and we can organize a deep dive session just looking at your app or your competitors.